Yes! Hello, my beautiful friends. What an amazing day it is, and welcome back. I hope that your rest was outstanding and you're waking up feeling ready to go as we motor through this Wednesday. We had a late night last night. Thanks to those of you who joined us for, I think, the best congressional address of all time. I think even the numbers will show that today. We got a bunch of news to attend to. We are here on an early show. Your boy is traveling this afternoon, tomorrow, and then we'll be back on Friday. So today is our stream. Tomorrow, we may not have a stream unless something breaks. We're not planning on it. I've got a full day event, so a little scheduling update there. Then we'll be back Friday with a Friday show. But that's the update. That's why we're a little early today. We've got a bunch of stuff to unpack. We've got a Supreme Court decision that just came down, and Judge Alito is stunned. He's not happy about it, nor are we. But we'll read through his dissent. Very nice dissent, very short opinion from the Supreme Court. We've also got some speech fallout, a bunch of clips from the Democrats. They've gone mental. We have several people like Rachel Maddow and others who are just very upset that a young boy who has recovered from cancer thus far is now a member of the Secret Service. They can't even believe it. So we'll talk about that. And then we've got some war updates. We've got some Zelensky news, some China news. And we've got, in about an hour from now, we have a press briefing from Caroline Leavitt. So if all works out according to plan, we'll time this puppy perfectly, and then we'll go through this press briefing together. So it's a beautiful day. I hope that, again, your rest was outstanding. Let's take a look at what's going on with the Supreme Court first, and then we'll get into more details. But this case, of course, involves Judge Amir Ali. And so here is what it looks like. The Supreme Court backstabs America. Thank you very much, Judge Amy Coney Barrett and Judge John Roberts, for not solving anything and for allowing this continuation of a takeover of the executive branch by the judiciary to continue. We're going to read through this. You can see it's a very short order from the court. The majority, this was a 5-4 decision, but the big response here comes in the form of a dissent. This comes from Judge Alito. In fact, he says, "I am stunned that you would do this." Now, it's not a good ruling, but it's not as bad as it might look at the outset. And as we've said here for a long time, Trump and the Trump administration, in this case, the State Department, has a lot of alternative sources of power. And we have some ideas on what they can do about this. And we actually even have pulled up some of the documents, the tax filings for this so-called coalition of AIDS vaccine advocates. We pulled up their website. I don't even know what they really do. We'll read through some of their tax documents and we'll say, well, interesting. Well, if we're going to give them a bunch of money, we certainly want to make sure that money is going to good use. Might be a good case for the reformed IRS to look into. And if there's any criminality or tax problems, maybe the new DOJ can look into that too. So we'll talk about that. But this is the decision that has come down. Now, just for context, this was the case that was emerging out of this guy's court, Judge Amir Ali. He is from Ontario, born there, moved over here, got shoved into the DC district, was appointed by Joe Biden, is a brand new judge. This case was brought against him from two different groups called the Global Health Council and the AIDS Advocacy Coalition, right? So we're always looking at these group names and we're asking ourselves, are they even real? Do they even do anything measurable or impactful? And we're going to go through one of the tax filings for the AIDS doctors. And we say that with not any pejorative on AIDS or cancer or global health or grandmas or anything else that they're claiming to treat. We're just noticing that they kind of feel like they're shell companies in our interpretation of what we're seeing here. They just gobble up money and pay a bunch of people and don't do anything meaningful in the end. So this came out. Now, of course, this is about unfreezing the money from the State Department, from USAID, from America that was being funneled out to all of these entities. Hand over fist, Trump came in, issued an executive order. From that executive order, so we follow the chain of the power. Where does the power emanate from? Well, President Trump signed it. He was empowered via the elections and the American people. So then from him, the executive order translated to Rubio, who was appointed by the president, confirmed by the Senate, and then distributed to the other components of the agency, USAID and the State Department. So what the judge did is they said, well, okay, well, those orders are illegal, and we're at the temporary restraining order stage now. So a couple things are happening. It says they're illegal in the context of a TRO, a temporary restraining order. And essentially that phase of litigation is where you want to maintain the status quo. Somebody's doing something and it might cause irreparable harm. You balance the equities. You find it's in the public interest. And you find that they're going to win anyways. And you say, we're going to preserve the status quo. So that's essentially what this judge has done. Now, it's not really preserving the status quo at all because the decision from this judge was way overbroad. Remember, the Trump administration could always say, well, we want to pay people when we have to pay them, like when it is due, when their bill is due. This judge says, no, you have to pay them everything. So let's say you owed them $1 million a month between now and the end of the year or whatever. You got to go back and pay all of that money and pay it right now. And if it's fraudulent, you got to pay it anyways. And give them better terms and all these things. Don't delay anything. Get it immediately and so on and so forth. And the State Department's going, what? We wouldn't have had to do that anyways. Even if we didn't have Trump's executive order or the State Department memo from Rubio, we still wouldn't be doing that. So what you've done is not returned us to the status quo. You've actually accelerated the ransacking of the funds. Judge Amir Ali issued that order. We talked about the case multiple times here. Trump, of course, appealed that to the Supreme Court. At the last minute, Judge John Roberts came out and issued a stay because this judge said Trump had to pay all of this money out by like midnight. So they appealed it. Emergency. Can you please stop this from happening? Judge Roberts came out to his credit and said, yeah, the stay is granted pending further filings. We read through those filings and the Supreme Court has come out today and issued their decision. And here's what it says. From the Supreme Court of the United States, this is the case involving the so-called AIDS doctors and the AIDS Vaccine Advocacy Coalition. We'll learn more about them as soon as we're through this decision here to see, are they even a legitimate entity? They say they are. What is our opinion? Now, this is from the majority decision. Okay, this is it. You're looking at it right here on the screen. It's a paragraph, so we don't get a lot of details on it. It was a 5-4 decision, as we'll see, because we've got 4 justices here who are dissenting, and their dissent is much longer. It's 8 pages versus the one simple paragraph that came in from the majority. Since we know the dissenters are Judge Alito, Thomas, Gorsuch, and Kavanaugh, we know that the 2 so-called Republican judges who are in the majority are Roberts and Amy Coney Barrett. Okay, so they're up here. Now they're joined by Kagan, Sotomayor, and Ketanji, who are the 3 leftists who will just vote against Trump because they're just copy and paste Democrats, just like the rest of those 22 senators. So here's what the majority wrote. Now, it is not a victory for the president, but it's not a total blowout. And let's parse through this with detail and explain why. On February 13th, the United States District Court, Judge Amir Ali from Ontario, entered a TRO. Okay, and the way these generally go, right, it's a TRO, and that can sit for a little while the status quo is maintained. Then you come and you have a full hearing for a preliminary injunction, and that makes it more permanent. Then from that preliminary injunction, you can appeal this, generally speaking. So he entered the TRO, and that is not generally appealable, stopping the government from enforcing pauses of disbursements of foreign funds. So the government paused the funds. The judge entered a TRO unpausing the funds so these grifting agencies can get paid. The present application does not challenge the government's obligation to follow that order. On February 25th, because again, right, the original TRO was only about the executive order and the State Department memo saying Trump ordered these frozen. But the original order also said that they could go find, they could look at the contracts And if the contracts give the State Department a right to cancel or to rescind or to modify, they can use that because it's authorized by the contract. The judge also said, if there's other statutes, if there's other regulations that you can follow, other laws that enable you to do this, then you can do that. So they said, fine, we won't even rely on Trump's executive order or the State Department memo. We'll go use our independent sources to cancel them. So then, right, so fine, the original TRO, we don't care. And they kept canceling everything anyways. Now on February 25th, then the judge came back and ordered the government to issue payments for a portion of the paused disbursements, which were those owed for work already completed before the issuance of the restraining order on February 26. So it's, get out your Kamala Harris Venn diagrams, and now we're starting to kind of separate, disambiguate what we're talking about. It's not all USAID funds that ever were paused. It's a much smaller subset. It's the paused disbursements for work already completed up until this particular time, which was February 26th. So it's only that amount of money. Now, several hours before that deadline, Trump and the government filed this application to vacate the 25th order because the 25th order said, you make those payments, and requested an immediate administrative stay. So then the Chief Justice entered an administrative stay shortly before the 11:59 deadline. That's when we said John Roberts got woken up out of bed and subsequently referred the application to the court. So this is all just procedural history. Now it gives us some context for what they're going to rule on here, but that application is denied. Okay, so the application to stop the order forcing them to pay by midnight is denied. Now that deadline has now come and passed, so that deadline's expired. So given that the deadline has now passed, there it is, and in light of the ongoing preliminary injunction proceedings, so we're going to have further proceedings on this, the district court, so Judge Amir from Ontario, should clarify what obligations the government must fulfill to ensure compliance with the TRO, with due regard for the feasibility of any compliance timelines. So the order heretofore entered by John Roberts is vacated. So this is pathetic, right? It's pathetic. It's like, well, we're going to punt this again because we haven't gotten to the preliminary injunction phase yet. And this is procedural crap. It's John Roberts, it's Amy Coney Barrett saying, well, we can't really appeal a TRO yet. We have precedent about this. And this argument from the dissenters, even Judge Katsas in the DC Circuit Court of Appeals said the same. Said, this is an injunction against the president, against the executive branch. He can't do what he wants to do. Empowered by the American people with the lawful authority to do it. So they're just punting it again, right? They're going to say this case is going to come back once the preliminary injunction proceedings are completed, then you can appeal it, and then maybe we'll hear it and decide differently, okay? But in the meantime, what they should do is clarify. So the judge should come back and should say, okay, you got to pay this corrupt agency, in my opinion, something by this date. You got to give them something by that date, okay? Get very granular and very detailed on this. And then maybe even have a hearing. Well, hey, U.S. State Department, when can you make these payments? What's your process? And the State Department, of course, in my take on this, they should scrutinize and audit and analyze and investigate every single cent that is given to these folks as good stewards of American capital. Make sure, why do they audit like the small mom and pop store? Why don't they audit these so-called health councils and advocacy coalitions for every stinking cent that we have to pay them? And if anything looks like it's fraudulent or maybe out of alignment with the contract that they signed, then we hit them with fraud charges from the DOJ. Just a thought. We'll come back on that. Now, here is what they have responded with in the dissent from Judge Alito, writing. Here's the question. Does a single district court judge who likely lacks jurisdiction, like Judge Amir Ali, because remember, this is a contract dispute. These are whiny so-called doctors and advocates, whatever that means, who are saying we are entitled to money. We're entitled to back pay, right? There's a whole separate court that is set up for this. Hopefully they talk about it. But I believe it's called the Court of Federal Claims. We'll come back on that and see if Alito explains it to us. But it's a different arena, okay, where they go, they've got jurisdiction. When you have a dispute with the government, you don't get to sue the government and then just stop the government from doing its job. You can go make a claim for monetary damages, but there's a different court for that. He says, but does Judge Amir Ali, does Judge Amy Berman Jackson, do any of these judges, do they have unchecked power to compel the government of the United States to pay out, and Alito says, and probably lose forever, $2 billion taxpayer dollars? Can they do that, one single judge? Well, the answer to that question should be an emphatic no. But a majority of this court apparently thinks otherwise. Judge Alito says, I am stunned. Saying in capsule form, this is what happened here. Respondents are a group of American businesses, okay, and nonprofits that receive foreign assistance funds from the State Department and the U.S. Agency for International Development. And they brought a lawsuit. Now let's just pause for a quick minute and just see who these people are, because I looked them up and here was one of their financial filings. And here is their website, actually. So if you go to their website, these AIDS doctors, AVAC, HIV prevention is a pathway to global health equity. Wow, that sounds really great. So what are they doing right there? It's the AIDS Vaccine Advocacy Coalition. And I was thinking to myself, we have an AIDS vaccine? That's crazy. I had no idea. So you go to their website and you look around and you ask, what do they do? So they give you prevention options. You're like, well, look at all this education, Rob, lots of stuff. It's like a Wikipedia article. Like, here's, oh, condoms, great. Oh, let's learn about condoms. Condoms can help you? Oh, great. It's like a 400-word article that you get for, you pay some web company to do it. Like, yeah, we'll write you 20 pages, like 500 words a piece. It's like nothing. Okay. They copy and paste a bunch of crap. Advocacy. They say condoms represent an essential contribution. Oh, great job. Thank you for that post. Amazing. So good work there. News and resources. What are they doing? Well, of course, they're talking about their lawsuit against the State Department because these doctors and these public servants want their money from the people who fired them. That's us. So they've got all these other links like in the news. Let's see what they've been doing in the news. Is there anything good? Okay, so there's somebody taking clips and linking to other articles. Great job. So AAP, Law and Crime, and it's all going against Marco Rubio. USAID contract still being terminated. Cuts are in jeopardy. We're going to die. Marco Rubio, brazen defiance. Okay. So it's now become an anti-Trump agency. That's what they're working on. Press releases, Supreme Court motion for civil contempt. How about before any of this? Like, what were they doing last year? HIV vaccine research must continue. Thousands sign a letter calling for a PrEP program. They condemn a court decision. So they're like bloggers, I think. New plan lays out priorities from them for swift and equitable rollout of an injectable. All right, so here, they publish this. Okay, so they put out press releases, essentially. And this looks like there might be some work done in here. We welcome a recent announcement. Okay, but this is what they do. And there's a ton of people here. I don't want to spend a ton of time on this, but there's a ton of people here. Look at all this staff, all these folks, program coordinator, human resources, digital technology, chief operating officer, regional program manager, and it's a ton of people. Okay, like that's a ton of people. Now, when you read through their tax filings, you see stuff like the following. I was reading through this, almost forgot to start the show. I'm like, what the hell's going on with this one? So if you look here, these are their tax filings. AIDS Vaccine Advocacy Coalition, Form 990. And they got total revenue, $14 million. That was in 2023. Good stuff. Lots of money that came in. Yeah, 23. So $14 million came in. Contributions and grants, total revenue, And they basically got a lot of it from contributions and grants. And here's what their mission is. Okay, so what does this company do? And what are they spending their money on? All right, so their goal is to accelerate the ethical development of effective HIV prevention options and ensure access to those options for everyone who needs them. And so that they can have, as part of a comprehensive integrated path to global health equity. Oh, there it is. So here, expenses, $4.2 million on research engagement and preparedness. Research preparedness is designed to shape the R&D environment through advocacy for investment, political support. It says this group tracks and translates advocacy and complex science to make the science accessible. Okay. And position community priorities at the center of global health. They've got improved trial design and conduct. They bring together people for meetings, civil society, policymakers, participants, probably host events. They develop materials and documents related to the prevention of HIV and AIDS, so little pamphlets and stuff. And they convened meetings with stakeholders to discuss their research findings. So they just do research and they have meetings. Okay, you can read through the rest of this. It's all on their website. But it's like, what are they actually doing? Alumni of these programs are leading. They've gone on to found civil society organizations to influence the pipeline and shape the media environment. Okay. It's like nothing. They're not curing AIDS. They're not doing any research. They're just going around talking about AIDS. Got it. All right. So that's what that's who is suing. The president has paused the funds to investigate it. The Supreme Court has decided they should get paid in spite of a presidential order to stop it. And here is what Alito says, continuing. He says, look, this group, this agency, they brought suit and they claim that the current administration's pause on their foreign assistance payments is unlawful. On February 13th, the district court, says Alito, issued a TRO requiring the government to halt its funding pause. It is based, that decision, on a finding that the AIDS doctors are likely to win, likely to succeed. They brought a claim. They said that the Trump administration violated the APA, the Administrative Procedures Act. Now, after issuing the TRO, the district judge, Judge Amir Ali from Ontario, grew frustrated with the pace at which the funds were being dispersed. He says, my friends need their money and they need it now. And on February 25th, he issued a second order requiring the government to pay out approximately $2 billion. Now, the judge brushed aside the government's argument that sovereign immunity barred this enforcement order. Trump said, you can't sue us here. We're immune here. You can go sue us in a different forum, but not here. And he took two steps that, unless corrected, would prevent any higher court from reviewing and even stopping these payments. First, he called this injunction a TRO. He just labeled it a TRO. Okay, and we know all the time how much liberals like to just change labels, even though it doesn't change what is underlying in reality. It's an injunction. It's not a TRO. Okay, we can see it. It's a gigantic injunction, and it's disgusting. And second, he demanded that the money be paid within 36 hours. What? Now, this left the government with little time to even try to obtain review of what it regarded as a lawless order. And that's why he did it, right? Go fast, get that money now. And this is the impeachment trap that we've brought up many times here. The judge is trying to ensnare Trump, trying to cause him to violate a court order. And they were pretty close. Now, the district court moved for a stay pending appeal in the district court. But the judge shrugged off the government and their sovereign immunity argument. They ignored the government's representation that the money in question, once it goes out, we're not getting that money back. Okay, these so-called AIDS doctors are going to go hog wild with it. The government quickly filed an appeal in the United States Courts of Appeals for the District of Columbia, but with only 4 hours to spare before the deadline, the Court of Appeals dismissed the government's appeal. They said, oh no, it is a TRO. They say it's a TRO. I mean, he identifies as a TRO. It's his lived experience that it is a TRO. But it's not. At face value and determined it lacked appellate jurisdiction. Oh, okay. Look, it says it's in his email signature. I am a TRO. Okay. Says, with nowhere else to turn and the deadline fast approaching, Judge Alito writes, the government asked this court to intervene. And at the last moment, the Chief Justice issued an administrative stay. Thank you, John Roberts. Now, unfortunately, a majority, even John Roberts, has now undone that. And as a result, the government must apparently now pay $2 billion post haste. Not because the law requires it, simply because a district judge called Amir ordered it. Now, as the nation's highest court, we have a duty to ensure that the power entrusted to federal judges by the Constitution is not abused. And today, the court fails to carry out that responsibility and acquiesces to Judge Amir, saying, time does not allow a lengthy discussion of the legal issues presented by this case, but a brief summary suffices to show that Judge Amir's order should be vacated or at the very least stayed. To start, it is clear that Judge Amir's enforcement order should be construed as an appealable preliminary injunction. It is an injunction. Everybody knows it's an injunction, and everybody can see it just looking at it. Not a mere TRO, okay? A TRO, as its name suggests, is what is called temporary. It's the first word. And its proper role is to restrain, the second word. Challenged conduct for a short period of time while the court considers whether more lasting relief is warranted. Now, the order here, which came from Judge Amir at the district court, which commanded the payment of $2 billion, a vast sum that in all likelihood can never be fully recovered, is in no sense temporary at all. Once that money is out, it's gone. Nor did the order merely restrain the government's challenged actions in order to, quote, preserve the status quo. Judge Alito citing other cases that explain how this works. Rather, it acts now as a mandatory injunction requiring affirmative action by the government. And given its likely irreversibility, the district court's enforcement order effectively gave the AIDS doctors a portion of the ultimate relief that they seek. So meaning it's like the end of the lawsuit is they want that money. So it's not a temporary restraining order. It's like a judgment of finality at this stage because you can't undo that. It's not pausing things and holding things in a circling holding pattern. For these reasons, the Court of Appeals did have jurisdiction in Washington, D.C. to consider the government's appeal, and we have jurisdiction to review and the ability to summarily vacate the lower court's erroneous judgment. Saying, even if the majority, Roberts, Amy Coney Barrett, and the three libs, even if they're unwilling to vacate Amir's order, it should at least stay the enforcement order until the government is able to petition here for a writ of cert. And I wonder if this is kind of an instruction to Trump on that in some way. Now, in considering whether to issue such a stay, we ask at minimum two questions. One, whether the moving party is likely to prevail on the merits, and whether that moving party is likely to suffer irreparable harm. So is Trump going to win? And if we don't take action here, are the American people via the Trump administration going to lose? Now, the judge, Alito, is writing here in a footnote, to the extent that likelihood of cert is a relevant factor to this decision, it's also met here. We're going to grant this. Recent years have seen a sharp increase in district court orders enjoining important government initiatives, and some of these has been labeled as unappealable TROs, citing the Dellinger case. That's the special counsel who was fired by Trump, that lawsuit. Saying clarification of the standards for distinguishing between a TRO and a preliminary injunction is a matter that deserves this court's attention at the present time, right? We need that badly to define what this is, how these judges can get away with this. If they're going to issue a TRO, when does that actually become a preliminary injunction that warrants an appeal? The same is true regarding the scope of the APA's waiver of sovereign immunity as well. So he says, In close cases, Alito writes, we also take into account other equitable considerations. Like if you put a bunch of stuff on a scale and balance it out, we would consider that. Here, these factors weigh in favor of a stay. Alito writes, the government has shown Trump a likelihood of success on the merits of its argument that sovereign immunity deprived Judge Amir Ali of jurisdiction to enforce its order. Sovereign immunity bars a suit by private parties seeking to impose liability which must be paid from the public funds in the Treasury, right? Otherwise, everybody's going to sue the government to get their money. But that is exactly what the district court ordered here. Citing this other case, saying the restrained defendants shall pay all invoices and a letter of credit drawdown request for all contract work completed before February. Now, sovereign immunity may be waived, but to sustain a claim that the government is liable for money damages, the waiver of sovereign immunity must extend unambiguously to those monetary claims. In other words, the waiver, Trump is saying, you can't sue me except for money. If you sue me for money, it's no problem. I waive the right to be sovereign from that. It's a strict requirement. It must be explicit, writes Alito. Trump didn't do that. Attempting to satisfy this strict requirement, they point to the APA. They say, well, the APA says that there is a waiver of sovereign immunity for certain actions. Now, that language, Alito writes, as we have explained, it distinguishes between a specific relief, which is permitted under the APA, and compensatory or substitute relief, which is not. But the relief here from these AIDS doctors more closely resembles a compensatory money judgment rather than an order for specific relief that might have been available under equity. Saying an injunction to compel the payment of money past due under a contract or specific performance of past due money was not typically available in equity. And so sovereign immunity thus appears to bar the sort of compensatory relief that the district court ordered here. He couldn't have done this, but they try to escape this. So then they point to this other case called Bowen, a 1988 case. Now, in that case, the Supreme Court held that the APA's waiver of sovereign immunity, it did cover a district court judgment that reversed a final order from HHS. In that case, though, Bowen simply recognized a basic reality of the APA. After a court sets aside that agency action, a natural consequence may be the release of funds to the plaintiff down the road. Now, we've since clarified that that sort of relief has been ordered here. But Judge Amir Ali also failed to mention or even reckon with any of this before he issued his $2 billion order. Judge Amir did not take it into account of our previous suggestion that the proper remedy for an agency's failure to pay, there you go, may be to seek sums and what is past due. There it is in the Court of Federal Claims. We created a whole separate court for you to sue the government in. The most that can be said is that in the district court's denial of Trump's motion for a stay, it cited but did not analyze a handful of cases echoing Bowen and their waiver of sovereign immunity. One might expect more care, from a federal court before it so blithely discards sovereign dignity. Judge Alito. One might expect more from Judge Amir Ali from a federal court, saying this guy just ignored basically a whole branch of law. Didn't even think about it. Saying, yeah, you know, your claims are valid, but I don't have the jurisdiction over them. Go to the Court of Federal Claims. And you can think of, cases or precedent, kind of like branches of a tree in a mind map even. He just forgot a whole branch, didn't even analyze it. The judge from the Supreme Court just backhanded this guy. He's young. He's like my age, I think, maybe younger than me. And he's new to the bench. And so he just got backhanded on like his first day in school. So finally, Alito writes, the government has a strong argument that the district court's order violates the principle that a federal court may not issue an equitable remedy that is more burdensome to the defendant than necessary to redress the injuries, right? So you can't overly punish the person's being sued, in this case, the government. Now, in this case, they are. Judge Amir's enforcement order functions as a universal injunction, defying these foundational limits on equitable jurisdiction. The district court, Judge Amir, ordered the government to, quote, pay all invoices and letter of credit on all contracts for pre-TRO work that was completed. That order encompasses more than just the respondents in this case. Okay, there's a certain set of people who are suing here, and he said, you got to pay everybody. And Judge Amir offered no reason why universal relief to non-parties is appropriate here. Like, why should they get, like, they're not suing. Why should they get their money? And this is not the sort of case in which the only universal relief is feasible. Even supposing the APA allows universal vacatur of rules in certain circumstances, the district court's order of direct monetary payment bears no resemblance to that. And nobody has suggested that the government is unable to identify respondents allegedly owed funds and pay out only them. Limiting the scope of relief in that matter would be significant. Below, at the lower courts, the government said that they seek $250 million, right? The people in this lawsuit. That's still a large figure, but it's only a fraction of the $2 billion that were ordered. So the people who are suing are owed $250, they claim, but the judge ordered $2 billion to go out. It's ridiculous. Emergency motion was referenced for that. Now, the dissent continues. Alito writes, there's also harm to the parties and others. Now, the government has shown that it is likely to suffer irreparable harm. If we have to give out this $2 billion, we're not getting it back. The government is represented. It would probably be unable to recover much of that money after it was paid because it would quickly be spent by the recipients and dispersed out to all the Democrats. $2 billion. Respondents did not credibly dispute this representation. They're like, oh yeah, no, like, yeah, once it hits our account, it's gone. We're going straight to the trans clubs. And the district court did not find that it is incorrect. So we usually balance equities, okay, when it's in close cases. We weigh the relative harms, says Alito. For the reasons I've explained, this is not such a case here, and our analysis could end there. Now, nevertheless, their equitable arguments are insufficient to justify a denial of a stay. They say that failure to pay them would cause them irreparable harm because without those funds, they couldn't continue to do their work, or they might have to reduce the work they do, like holding their little meetings. As a result, they claim recipients of their services would suffer. Now, these consequences, of course, are serious, says Alito, but any harm resulting from the failure to pay amounts that the law requires would have been diminished, if not eliminated, if the Court of Appeals had promptly decided the merits of the government's appeal, which it should not have dismissed. If we sent this case back to the Court of Appeals, it could still render a prompt decision. If it decided in favor of the respondents, the government would be obligated to pay all the money that is due, and then they would have suffered only a short delay in the receipt of the payments. And if the government prevailed and won on its sovereign immunity argument, which Judge Amir completely neglected, neither the respondents nor any of the recipients would have suffered any unlawful consequences. They just ignored all of it. So in sum, Alito says, the factors we consider in deciding whether to issue a stay weigh strongly in favor of granting that relief, saying, as he wraps up, today, the Supreme Court makes a most unfortunate misstep that rewards an act of judicial hubris to Judge Amir. That is a scolding from the Supreme Court, okay? That's a big thing that's going to go in the history books. It imposes a $2 billion penalty on American taxpayers. And the Democrats are the ones who are launching these lawsuits. These are blue agencies through and through, and they want their money. They're going to steal that money, in my opinion. It's my interpretation of what's happening to the funds. But that money is going to be repurposed into Democratic operations. It's not going for the goodness of America. It's stolen money. Trump came in and cut it off, and they're suing their doctors and civil servants and global health leaders and advocates and blah, blah, blah. You guys lost the election. The American people have spoken. We don't want you to do those things anymore. And they're such civil servants that they're now suing the people that they're supposed to be serving. Thank you guys for doing such heroic work out there, serving all of us. The district court has made plain its frustration with the government. And respondents raised serious concern about non-payment for completed work. But the relief ordered is quite simply too extreme of a response. A federal court has many tools to address a party's supposed nonfeasance. Self-aggrandizement of its jurisdiction is not one of them. I would chart a different path than the court does today, so I must respectfully dissent from Judge Alito. And that is a good dissent. And he's right. It is actually quite shocking that this is all that we get from Amy Coney Barrett and John Roberts. We get this little one paragraph here at the top, which is essentially saying we'll look at this later once it comes back on, but we'll let the lower level court come through and give us more granular details on how these payments should be made. And then what we expect to see is Trump and the State Department fighting on every one of those particular line items. Okay, so when the lower level judge comes back out and says you got to pay this and this and this, they'll say, well, that one's fraudulent, or this one maybe we're okay with, this one we don't owe that work on, and so on. And we'll see if they appeal these other orders and where this goes. But a very disappointing decision from Roberts, who was just on the other side of the stay. He just granted the stay, and now he is reversing himself, so great. And Amy Coney Barrett, of course, is a stickler over this TRO stuff, is what we've read, but she's also seemingly somebody who is not a reliable conservative, who in many cases likes to thumb the eye of Trump and the American people. So a disappointing decision from them. But of course, here is how Fox News was reporting it. Shout out to Carly Bonney for grabbing this clip for us. Here is how they explain it.
A judge's order that could force the Trump administration to resume foreign aid payments. A lot of this has to do with USAID, and Shannon Bream is on that. Shannon, what happened?
Okay, so this is one of the very first things from this term to make it fully to some kind of decision from the U.S. Supreme Court. And this is about foreign aid that was ordered to be paid out by a lower court judge. There were groups who take in USAID money, and they had gone and said, listen, this freeze is harming us. And they went to the district court judge, that lower court level, and he said, yes, the government has to pay this out. It went through the appeals, got to the Supreme Court. They, by a 5-4 vote today, say they won't put that judge's order on hold. But they've told that lower court, now you need to explain to the Trump administration exactly what money you want them to pay out. The dissenters, led by Justice Alito, also with Thomas, Gorsuch, and Kavanaugh, which means that Chief Justice Roberts and Justice Barrett did side with the Democrat appointees on the court. They've said they're dissenting. And let me read you a little bit of this. They say the court makes a most unfortunate misstep that rewards an act of judicial hubris and imposes a $2 billion penalty on American taxpayers. They say the relief that's been ordered to pay this money out is an extreme response. It says a federal court has many tools to address a party's supposed malfeasance. Self-aggrandizement of its jurisdiction is not one of them. In plain English, they think the lower court got it wrong and was way out of bounds to order this money paid out. They say it's going to be to the harm of the American taxpayer. They've now said to that lower court, explain to the Trump administration exactly what they have to do. But the order stands. The money's got to go out.
Shannon, how big of a surprise is this? How do you find it?
Listen, anytime it's a 5-4, you can't be sure exactly. You know, it was a close decision. One vote flips either Roberts or Barrett the other way, and this is a different decision. So we knew they were wrestling with it, and the fact that this lengthy dissent has been written, led by Justice Alito, means the court really struggled with it. But it is a loss for the Trump administration. Of the nearly 100 cases now pending, there's some other stuff we're waiting.
Yeah, and it is a little bit of a surprise, I'd say. In a way, also not in a way, because we're still at the early stage of all of this, and we're still at the TRO stage. So the next question will be, how long can the TRO remain in effect? The judge will issue an order, lickety-split. I'm sure we'll see that very soon. We'll have some argument about that from the Trump administration. Well, we can't pay this by this date, and here's why. And we've also seen, by the way, that they've already canceled many of these contracts. So like this $2 billion will go out, but it's not going to continue to go out. So earlier we covered how when they said you have to unpause them, they said, that's fine, we'll just cancel the contracts. So there is nothing to unpause. So hundreds of contracts, maybe thousands, have already been canceled. So the money that will go out, we're going to fight over this $2 billion, but the spigot has largely been shut off, right? It's not forcing them to continue the contracts. And in many ways, this battle has accelerated the cancellation of large swaths of contracts. Now, I am still hopeful that the Supreme Court does correct, as was suggested by Judge Alito in his dissent, this massive TRO nationwide problem. This might not be the one that the Supreme Court wanted to kind of step in on. I don't know why. Maybe they're keeping their eye on some other cases like the Scott Bessent case. Bunch of stuff is going to continue to bubble up and percolate to the Supreme Court. It's also not unusual for the Supreme Court to wait for a couple issues that are kind of similar to align. Like in this case, we're going to have the Hampton-Dellinger case, the MSPP board case, who got reinstated, Mary, what's her name? And then cases like this, right? So the Supreme Court might come back down and issue a more blanket rule that goes to TROs or TROs against the executive branch. We'll see. But a disappointing decision today. And Amy Coney Barrett and Judge Robert once again failed America. All right, so that's the update over on the Supreme Court. Now, meanwhile, we're seeing other stories like this. $375 billion, a slush fund that was handled by John Podesta, who's a very deeply embedded Democratic operative who is very close with Hillary Clinton, and whose brother, I believe, has some of the most disgusting artwork you've ever seen in your life in his demonic household. But there was a slush fund that was sending tons of money, not only out to the AIDS doctors and USAID and elsewhere, but also to EPA individuals and people like Stacey Abrams. Look at the size of this money. And the Biden administration funneled at least $20 billion into environmental groups, many of which had been recently funded and founded. We know that this happened with Stacey Abrams. We have Senator Kennedy, who's going to explain more coming up. But in one case, Kamala handed a check of $7 billion to Bethesda, Maryland. It was a group called the Climate United Fund, which has no federal filings and doesn't appear in the IRS charities database. How is that not fraud and theft? The nonprofit fund had only been incorporated in November 30th, 2023, 5 months before they got cash. So they're like, cool, yeah, just stand up a nonprofit. It's hard to get funding for a nonprofit. Those of you who've been around a while, we do Eric's House, ericshouse.org. We do an annual fundraising event. We raise like $50,000 to $75,000, and it's a great, great day for us. It's amazing. And we've been doing this work for a long time. It'd be pretty cool if we could just open up a nonprofit and just get $8 billion, $7 billion. Wouldn't that be amazing? Yeah, but we actually do good work there, okay? Not Democratic investments. So the Climate United Fund then announced the historic investment in a press release, saying the group delivers benefits like cleaner air and increased energy security. It's fake. That's why nobody was upset about Hunter Biden. They're like, yeah, so what if he's got all these 50 shell companies? They all have them. They're funneling billions to them. However, because the company is so new, there's no publicly published accounting of how it plans to spend $7 billion. Projects have been announced, including $10.8 million for a pre-development loan solar project on tribal lands in eastern Oregon and Idaho. Yeah, on tribal lands. Yeah. And $32 million of solar energy projects at the University of Arkansas. But they represent only a drop in the bucket of the grant's total amount. Ethically speaking, someone said it's concerning. A watchdog group. What was the purpose of creating middlemen entities? When there are so many established groups in the climate space, they've already been around forever. Just go give them some money. The cash for the charity came from a huge $370 billion climate slush fund overseen by John Podesta, a political consultant of Hillary and a disgusting person, saying in 2022, Joe Biden named Podesta to head the slush fund. Last year, EPA advisor was caught on video describing how the agency hastily parceled out $20 billion, which was held by Citibank. That went out to, allegedly, Stacey Abrams. Now Lee Zeldin is clawing it back, trying to get that money back from the thieves. There's John Podesta. And they got tons of money. All right, so here is more on that. So they brought out Stacey Abrams, the person who was benefiting, responsible for being involved in some of this. They asked her some questions, and here's what some of that sounded like.
Right, with us is the two-time nominee for governor of Georgia, Stacey Abrams. Thank you so much for being with us. He called you out by name. What's your response?
That he is trying to distract Americans from his failure to deliver on any of his promises.
What?
And instead of doing his work, he's going after those of us who are actually doing the work of the American people. I am very proud of the work that I've done to protect voting rights, to lower the cost of energy for real people in the state of Georgia, and working with organizations that want to do it around the country, because Donald Trump is failing in his promises and focusing on petty retribution instead of fulfilling his promises to the American people.
What is your connection to this organization that did get funding, did get federal funding?
I led a project in Southwest Georgia that has lowered the cost of energy for struggling families, and I'm extraordinarily proud of that work. And because of that work, because of the work of 5 major organizations around this country who have done more than 250 years of service combined, the Biden administration authorized a grant. I did not work for the entity that received the grant ultimately. I worked for one of the partner organizations, but I was very much a part of pushing and showing America that we have the ability to lower prices, that the money is there, the will is there, the capacity is there. But what is not there is Donald Trump and his lackeys' willingness to actually let American people get the benefit.
I don't even know what she said, right? We're just there talking, doing things. It's very difficult to even understand what she's saying. We've got Caroline Leavitt coming up soon, but here's what Kennedy said in response to Stacey Abrams and her little shtick where she was involved but not involved, doesn't work for them, not getting any money from them, kind of over here. They're doing good work, educating people, advocating for certain things. Here's how it really went down, according to Senator Kennedy.
Here's what I see. I see 2 organizations formed in the last year or so of President Biden's administration. On their IRS filings, they say we have no experience, we have no accomplishments. One of them only has $100 in the bank. One of them, senior counsel, is Ms. Stacey Abrams, a well-known Democratic politician.
Yep.
I see them asking the President of the United States and his EPA for $2 billion cash to fight gas stoves, and getting it to the exclusion of every other applicant who might have been able to use that money. Now, this is just the beginning of the type of spending porn that President Trump and Mr. Musk are uncovering, that people are screaming about. I'm going to repeat what I started with. There's nothing wrong with wanting to know what they do and did with our money. And that's all President Trump and Mr. Musk are doing.
That's all we want, is just some responsibility in our federal government, but they don't want any of that. Accountability is what exposes the grift. They need the grift to continue to prop up their fake party and their infrastructure. And now that that is coming to a close, you see them screaming at the sky because they know it is the end of the good old days where they could just get money hand over fist. All right, so good stuff there. Let's take a look before Caroline Leavitt comes out at the polls, baby. Trump's address crushes in the polls. Even CBS News has to report it. Says that the majority of viewers approved of what they heard last night. And I think the reaction universally has been very good. I think maybe the best that Trump has ever received. Certainly the best I think we've ever seen from him, because he captured the moment beautifully and viewers agreed. Here's what CPS said. The viewership was heavily Republican, but look at these numbers, baby. Views of Trump's speech among speech watchers, 76% approve, according to this poll. 23% disapprove, and that's like the AOCs and the Rashida Tlaibs. So here's the time spent on issues you care about. Boom, 63%, a lot. Issues you care about, Trump talked about it. 9%, he didn't talk about trans comic books in Peru. Party identification. 51% of Republicans watched it, or of the watchers were Republican. 27% were independent. 20% were Democrats. They were watching Markle. Speech made you feel. 68% said hopeful. 54% said proud. 27% said worried. 16% said angry. Those are great numbers. And that's how we felt. We had DJ in the House who's going to lead the Secret Service now. In the speech, Trump was presidential, 74%. Entertaining, 74%. Inspiring, 71%. Unifying, 62%. And divisive, 46%. More. Does Trump have a clear plan for inflation? 68% say yes to 32% saying no. Lots of people liked the talk about the waste in government spending, immigration and the border, Ukraine and Russia, tariffs and more. Good numbers there. Trump described the crime problem accurately, according to 68%. Numbers are huge. Saying having the congressman removed from the chambers, Congressman Al Green, should he have been removed? 76% say yes, they should. And so further crosstabs there. Very good numbers for the president. The magazine called Reuters said the same thing. Combative Trump declares America is back. Voters agreed. April and others said, what'd you like about it? It says, well, the whole mass deportation effort resonates with me because you have a lot of Hispanics who were born here, naturalized legally, and then illegal immigrants give the rest of us a bad name, she says. Others had reaction. So good stuff happening there. Mike Johnson came out and shared his take in the aftermath. Here's what he had to say, standing behind the president during the address.
Al Green was trying to interrupt the entire proceeding. But I'll just say this. If the Democrats want a 77-year-old congressman to be the face of their resistance heckling the president, then bring it on. But we couldn't allow that on the House floor, and so I had to eject him. I didn't want to do that. I hate that it resorted to that, but we've got to keep decorum in the chamber. This used to be a celebrated event, pomp and circumstance, and both sides would applaud for the president. We did that for President Biden on the lines that were there. But last night, the Democrats couldn't even stand for the Americans that President Trump was recognizing in the gallery. I mean, you had the families of, Jocelyn Nungery and Laken Riley and Corey Comparatore, Americans who had lost their lives. They couldn't stand and applaud for the capture of the terrorist mastermind of Abbeygate. It was really a sad affair. Al Green.
Very sad affair, but that is who the Democrats are. They are just mostly miserable folks. We know that Al Green is going to be hit with a censure resolution, and he can join the likes of pencil neck Adam Schiff as someone who is historically censured. But they couldn't even stand the Democrats for DJ, America's newest Secret Service agent, who's going to do a much better job than Kimberly Cheadle and her people who were trying, so-called, to protect the president. Here was an appearance over with Fox today.
Well, I'm his dad, but I realized I became a chauffeur. So
driving him around.
I found him driving him all across the nation and relentlessly and tirelessly get him there. Because the Texas Children is considering his swearings as treatment, so we utilize that. And his brothers are actually his medical support, too.
Right.
Yes, sir.
And so he's been sworn in by 909 different agencies. But DJ, last night, you officially became a member of the Secret Service. That's the coolest one, right?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. You know, I know you did.
Yes, sir. Man, it is cool. Secret Service is pretty cool. Now, that was an amazing moment, obviously pretty emotional. I think a lot of people were even caught off guard. I was. What the heck is going on right now? And that kid's eyes bulged out there in front of everybody. Oh, that was amazing. So some people, though, found it to be disgusting, like a disgusting person called Rachel Maddow. She said the following.
For the record, and this is disgusting, the president made a spectacle out of praising a young man who thus far survived pediatric cancer.
But he might die.
As if the president had something to do with that. This was in the midst of him praising Doge. The Doge cuts, among other things, have cut off funding for ongoing research into pediatric cancer.
So Trump is going to kill kids with cancer. And then he exploited a kid with cancer. And Rachel Maddow's very upset about it. I'm like, do you even understand that it's about the kid, not about you? And it's about that moment for him and his family and about the inspiration that he provides to everybody. But of course, she turns it political, just like this lunatic, Nicole Wallace. She said the same thing, saying, well, she hopes little DJ lives a nice, fruitful life and he's not killed because of Trump.
But I think this was a lesson in finding one thing that you let yourself feel. And I let myself feel joy about DJ. And I hope he's alive for another, 95 years, right? And I hope he lives and the life he wants to live. He wants to be a cop. He knows what he wants to do. And maybe when you have childhood cancer, that crystallizes for you. And I hope he has a long life as a law enforcement officer. But I hope he never has to defend the United States Capitol against Donald Trump's supporters. And if he does, I hope he isn't one of the 6 who loses his life to suicide. And I hope he isn't one who has to testify against the people who carried out acts of seditious conspiracy and then lived to see Donald Trump pardon those people.
Wow.
I think
and you can see in her face, she's like, man, this is such a good comment. Because this is what they say when they're around their cocktail tables at their Hollywood parties or whatever it is, right? She wraps up. I don't know where they broadcast from, but they go around and they just offer like these little snide comments around, like, Trump, maybe he didn't commit suicide, kill himself. Like, and everybody around her, so it was like, ooh, that's a good burn, Nicole. You got that one, She forgot, I think she's on national TV and the kid's 13 and he just had a very amazing moment. So she's like prognosticating, well, hopefully he's not dead in a month. Sheesh. Totally miserable people. You can see how upset they are. This is how you know that the winning is true and real and authentic. We're winning so hard, they can feel it in their bones. And that's the reaction that you get out of them because they just can't even experience. She didn't experience any joy. Give me a break. She said that because she had to say that because she's like, yeah, everybody else. Trump exploited this kid and he's probably going to kill him too. Sheesh. Good Lord. What a miserable person. So speaking of another miserable person, here was Jasmine Crockett. Now she drops an F-bomb on here. So if you got little ones in the room, I'm going to do my very best to mute it when it happens. But here is what she sounded like last night.
This is not what we should be doing. I don't even know why we fighting with Greenland. Why we fighting with Greenland? We fighting with Canada. We fighting with Mexico. Yet we in love with Putin. What is happening? Like, this is not America. This is a terrible nightmare. Somebody slap me because I'm ready to get on with it.
Okay, that's Jasmine Crockett. Probably hanging out with Nicole Wallace soon. Chuck Schumer also very unhappy about all this. Here's how he sounded.
You called it nasty. It was like 4 minutes into the speech when Congressman Al Green was yelling at the podium and he was escorted out. What was going through your head as you heard the congressman yelling?
Well, look, the bottom line is lots of people are frustrated. But the best way to protest what Trump is doing what we are doing and many senators and many congressmen are doing, and that is organizing against these horrible policies of calling Social Security a Ponzi scheme and then slashing
would you
people
rather,
in Social
would you
Security
rather
offices.
that Congressman
So here's
Green,
what we're, John, here's what we're doing.
Would you rather that he not yell?
Let me just say, the best answer, in my judgment, is to organize. So I put a call together last week with our activists. I thought 300-400 people would get on the phone. 3,000 people got on the phone. And what we all decided was we're going to focus our energy on the 6 Republican Congress members from New York, because they hold the key to stopping these horrible policies. As you know, in the House, all you need 1 or 2. In the Senate, you need 3 or 4. We don't have Republican senators in New York, but in other states
so they're targeting
and the best way to organize and protest is to organize. Organizing is hard, but it's effective, and that's what we're doing.
Well, let me ask a different way. Would you rather see Democrats more in line with what Senator Alyssa Slotkin was saying, or more in line with what Congressman Al Green and people holding signs in the audience were doing last night?
Look, I thought Alyssa Slotkin, I chose her because she is such one of our rising stars. From the Midwest, won a race, knows how to talk to average folks, to working families, and she did a great job. And I think, again, the American people got more truth in her 5 minutes of her speech than with all the lies, with all the misconceptions, with all the things that were departing from reality. When Donald Trump says he's the greatest president after 30 days of chaos and hurting people since George Washington, give me a break.
Chuck Schumer, these last 30 days have been wins, delivering win after win after win. The only people that are hurting, well, in large part, are your constituents who are Democrat operatives, right? It's the people who make up their power base are the ones who are getting, well, the most loud over what is being done. Obviously, that's because it is impacting them. Congressman Tom Barrett also posted this. He says, I got to meet the newest member of the United States Secret Service today. There's DJ with his badge, close-up photo there, which is, of course, very fun. So shout out to them and to that congressman. And here was a little bit more of DJ explaining where he comes from and what he is going to be doing.
But you want to know the craziest part? Because my mom bathes me and my brothers all together. And out of nowhere, I locked up. And then my dad was calling my name, and I started going to the slow thing. And he said, "Stop playing with me." And I started to act. I ain't gonna lie, I started to act slow. And then as soon as he said that, we was speeding all the way, running lights, going to the hospital. And then next thing you know, I was seizing on the table. They said, "Nah, we gonna have to go in his brain tonight." Ever since then, I had 13 brain surgeries, and that's how many times my personality has changed. And that's something that you don't hear from a terminally ill child. They had 5 months to live. I'm gonna keep on going until my gas tanks run out. And that's when God calls you home. You never know when God's gonna call you home. I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for my dad. I know he's pretty proud of me, and I'm pretty proud of him too. And I'd like to thank President Trump, because if it wasn't for him, I wouldn't be here today.
Man, amazing. So that kid is like wise beyond his years. Holy moly. That was pretty impressive. So, all right. So that is the reaction from the Democrats to a very important speech. Couldn't even stand up for little DJ. All right. And so, as you saw, we're keeping our eye on what is happening here with the press briefing. And let's see if this is where we're at over here. It was supposed to start 8 minutes ago. So we'll see when it gets kicked off here. Probably will happen any minute. In the meantime, let's see who's here. Let's see what you guys say about it. I see some great donos. Thank you for sending these in. Oh, we got some new membos in the house. What's up? Nunya Business is coming in. Great to see you, Nunya Business. Let's say hello to our friends. Let's see who's here and who's joining us as we await Madam Caroline. She should be coming out soon. In the meantime, let's see who is here. What's going on? We got some great comments in the house and some great donos that have come in. What's up, Run Mead? Thank you, Run Mead. All right, let's see who's here. Wow, this is a cool photo. All right, turn that volume down a little bit till Caroline emerges. We got Run Mead. Says, good morning from San Saba, Texas. Man, that's a great photo. Are you on that boat? You going sailing today, Run Mead? Great to see you. Thank you for being here. We got Not a Fed. Says, Amy Coney Barrett makes total sense when you realize that Mitch McConnell was the one that recommended her to Trump and pushed for her so hard in the Senate. Yeah, she's been pretty much a disappointment on a lot of issues, a lot of big issues. And we'll see ultimately where it goes. What's up? Nunya Business is here. Good to see you, Nunya Business. Thanks for becoming a membo and a supporter. Sandy, what's up? Says Shipwreck Crew has an interesting take on SCOTUS. Shout out to Shipwreck Crew over on X. Thank you, Sandy, for that. Adesia, what's up? Says HIV is a scam. Ask Fauci. It's a big pharma scam, so they can pump you full of more pharma drugs. Ask Fauci. Yeah, Fauci had a lot of there, right? Yeah, I think of that book, The Real Anthony Fauci. Talked a lot about that. Chubby, what's up? Hey, I'm now wondering if maybe Amy Coney Barrett has a nonprofit that benefits from USAID funding somewhere. Can't say I'm completely shocked. She voted to support judicial overreach, though, sadly. Yeah, it is a good question, right? It is a good question. I think that is an appropriate question to ask everybody in government now. And Supreme Court judges are not beyond that. But yeah, are they doing the same shtick, right? With their husbands and kids and cousins and nieces and nephews and so? What's up, Da Hook? Says, happy 3rd birthday to Loki today. Handsome boy Loki, 3rd birthday. Somebody is getting steak tonight. Ooh, it's going to be a real happy boy over there. What's up, Glocky? Says, did he kick you out too? Zelensky got booted, and so did Al Green. Yeah, he booted me out too. Not good. What's up? Good to see you. Thank you, Glocky, for that. Here's another one. Here were the signs the Democrats should have been holding up. America last. I love war. I steal from taxpayers. Yeah. I voted against women. That dude especially. Illegals first. I don't know what a woman is. Yeah. Appropriate signs and nicely matched with the Democrats. Hey, Brian Hinkle is bringing in Mario Quinones. Thank you, Brian, for doing that. Welcome, Mario. Jim tells you. What's up, Jim? Says, time to impeach Robert and Barrett also. Roberts and Barrett also. And Trump could have 2 new appointments. That, of course, would be fun. Don't think that's going to happen. But we are wondering if there will be other spots opening up, right? Like Clarence Thomas is getting up there. Alito's getting up there. Glocky says, it's clearly obvious that Trump can't rely on the courts. Indeed, they are going to do everything to stop him. And the Republicans in Congress are just going to pass a CR until next year and keep the current spending and funding. So it appears nothing is going to change when it comes to Republicans funding the NGOs that funnel money to the Democrats and work against them. Yeah, which is why the executive branch needs to take the lead on it, right? The Republicans are way too spineless in Congress. They're not going to do anything to help. So as long, right, and that's why Elon is moving so quickly so that they can make these changes before the blob has time to re-blobify. Debbie Cole, what's up, Debbie? Says Trump could literally appoint a special counsel that has subpoena powers and criminal referral powers. The DOJ could open up investigations. Congress could actually pass laws and haul everyone before them to testify under oath. What is the dang dadgum holdup? It's a good question, Glocky. They could do all those things. Yeah, and these nonprofits, I'd like to make sure that they're actually agreeing with the terms of their contracts. And if they're violating the terms of their contracts, they should be sued civilly by the Justice Department Civil Division to go recoup those funds. And if there's criminal charges, well, then they should be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law. Everybody involved. Glocky, and you only got to do it a couple times and these lawsuits will stop. Glocky, current mood, because we all know damn well that if Democrats win in 26, in 24 hours, they will impeach Trump and open investigations into every Republican. Yeah, here's MAGA. The arrests are coming any day now. It's kind of how I feel. Like with Liz Cheney, you know. It's going to be here like a broken record. Has Liz Cheney been indicted yet? Do we have the Epstein files yet? Has anything happened to Adam Schiff? No. All right. Glocky, what's up? What if we bring silly little signs and don't clap for each other for a child with brain cancer? Democrats like, yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah, well, that sounds good. Good idea. And let's go record our little stupid videos now. Hey, Dan. What's up, Dan? This organization, AVAC, AIDS Vaccine Advocacy Coalition, isn't part of any awards or grants via USAID from the period of 2003 and 2025. From Dan. Dan, I'm not sure where you're sourcing that. I'm not sure if that's from Data Republican or just like the federal agencies, but I'm sure that they are in some way. Otherwise, they wouldn't have gotten, they wouldn't be suing. Like it sounds like they're entitled to some money, even if it's $250 million, right? But I don't know where the money came from or what source you're looking at. James Anderson, what's up, James? Says Roberts and Barrett need to be investigated, from James Anderson. We'll see if they got any USAID money. That would explain a lot, wouldn't it there, James? Thanks for being a member for 2 months. Hey, Glocky's here. Yeah, Robert De Niro and this purple-haired lady. Is that the same person? Finkel is Einhorn. Einhorn is Finkel. Finkel is a man. Huh. Glocky shared this one. MSDNC. We now go to Rep. Al Green to discuss being thrown out of Trump's address. Representative Green? That's what he looks like right there. Yeah. Good to see you. MSDNC in the house. Let's see what else we got cooking. Glocky shared this one. Yeah, this is exactly right. Elizabeth Warren doesn't like DJ, but Elizabeth Warren likes dead Marines and dead Ukrainians. Hey, what's up? Glocky's here. It's telling us this one. From Trump with flags. Yeah, here's the difference between our two countries, Canada and the United States. There's Canada right there. That is Canada, apparently, until they do something differently. Bonnie says, if I was RFK, I'd immediately stop all grants and funding and research on AIDS because these groups are already doing it. Yeah, I guess that's true too. Yeah, the government doesn't need to do it. All these people are working so hard to like advocate for AIDS vaccines. Great. Sandy, Inner City is covering a hearing happening now. New York City versus Trump about the $59 million for the housing. Tish wants her money back. Thank you, Sandy. Spuds is here, 24 months as a membo. Hey, what's up? Thank you, Spuds, for being here for 24 months. Says shell companies are modern day horse thievery. Shell companies are modern day horse thievery. Yeah, certainly looks like this. Hey, Whoopsie Daisy says this is my grandson with maybe brain cancer is what we're seeing here from Whoopsie Daisy. Well, thank you for sharing your grandson with us. I'm not sure if there's any context to that, but we appreciate it. I hope he's healthy now. Looks like he was in the hospital. I hope he's healthy. Elf is here. Thank you, Elf. Says, thanks for the great coverage, Robert. Thank you, Elf, for being here. Thanks for the dono. Yeah, the Supreme Court case wasn't one of the better things to cover, but it's happening. Thank you all for that. Thanks for the nice dono. Where is Caroline? Ed, what's up, Ed? 2276, bringing in 5 membos. Jeremiah Bond is in the house. NM Flyer Robin, welcome. Christine Huff is in the house. Dan Simpson and Super Goober. Welcome, Super Goober, to our community. All right, let's make sure. We're live here. Yeah, and she has not come out yet. All right. What's up, Sharpie Guy? Says, what is going on with Amy Coney Barrett? She's MIA when needed the most. Suppose she has a connection to unsaid money somehow. I'm thinking she does. Yeah, I mean, it's a good good question. I don't know. Hopefully she's beyond reproach on that, but you never know. Kathy Price, what's up, Kathy Price? Thank you for becoming a supporter. Renee Sargent says, I need my legal news tomorrow. Amazing, Renee Sargent. Well, we're going to miss you tomorrow. Probably. I don't know. If something major happens, we might be able to squeeze a stream in, but I'm going to be in Scottsdale at an in-person event all day long, and I'm excited for it. Thank you, Renee. Dan, my source for USAID is from the federal website. From Dan. Thanks, Dan. Glenn, what's up, Glenn? Hot Take is here. We got Dirt Bike coming in. We got Todd Lupe. We got Pure Chaos, which is Jess Tex in the house. Who's Handsome? Jennifer Villarreal. Alias is joining us. And Trumpum just joined us as well. Thank you for bringing in new friends, Glenn Croy. 10 new friends. You're the man. We got this one from Simply Good Treats. Hey, got gifted a membo. Welcome aboard, Simply Good Treats. This old guy says the American people saw how Congress is completely vacuous and how completely vacuous the Democrats are. They are totally empty of happiness for anything representative of normal Americans. I'm absolutely unable to align with the single thing they stand for or the disgusting way they do so. Yeah, yesterday was not a good day for them. They looked really bad and petulant, and I think that is going to leave a sour taste in many people's mouths, even other Democrats. And I saw some posts from other Democrats even today, like, yikes, we got to get better about this. So they're definitely getting worse. They're not getting better, and we're okay with that. What's up? Charitard says, what's the likelihood this affects all aid that's paused? Well, a lot of it's already been canceled. So like there isn't much aid that is paused anymore, at least in the State Department. They've already gone through all the contracts and canceled a lot of them. So that was the silver lining in this is they said you have to unpause the funds. They said, well, we're not unpausing anything. How about we just cancel it? And just canceled it. So now there might be other TROs that say undo the cancellations, but that was not this current case. So this case affects what was due for everybody before the TRO. It's a huge amount of money, but it's not it's not forward looking. Okay, it's retroactive essentially. Sharpie Guy, what's up? Sharpie Guy says the dumb Democrats showed serious depravity last night as Trump laid waste to them when he called out Pocahontas. I was rolling in laughter. My dogs, Miss Gracie and Hobbs, were looking at me wondering what the heck was happening over there because there was so much excitement in the room. It was funny, man. Trump is funny. And he was on a tear. And that Pocahontas clip was pretty funny too because she was like, she didn't know what to do. She was just kind of sitting there like, she's like, I am 1/10/24 Indian, you know. Don't be a bigot. So, all right, anyways. So we got some other stories. While we're waiting for Caroline to pop out, you may have seen this one, but intelligence has been cut off to Ukraine. CIA Director John Ratcliffe said it is not going to be transmitted to them until we get some progress. He said on Wednesday the U.S. has paused support and weapons shipments to the Ukrainian president, Zelensky. He said Trump had a real question about whether Zelensky was committed to the peace process. And he said, let's pause. I want to give a chance to think about that. And you saw the response that President Zelensky put out, said Ratcliffe. So I think on the military front and the intelligence front, the pause that allowed to happen, I think will go away. Ratcliffe expressed hope the pause will be lifted and emphasized his commitment. I think we'll work shoulder to shoulder with Ukraine as we have to push back on the aggression that's there, put the world in a better place for these peace negotiations to move forward. A senior military official said the U.S. had already curtailed some intelligence sharing, including carrying out fewer intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance flights that could impact both offensive and defensive operations and more. So CNN reported that. Meanwhile, China is not happy with our new tariffs, and they say they're ready for war. And they actually posted about this on X, and I think I had that on X, but they had it here. They say China has said it is ready for war as it raises defense spending. They said whether you call it a tariff war, trade war, or any other type of war, we're ready to fight to the end. They posted that on X, their Ministry of Foreign Affairs. So that's also percolating, and we'll see how that continues to develop. Meanwhile, Kash Patel is celebrating justice. He says, as President Trump just announced yesterday, I can report that tonight the FBI, the DOJ, and the CIA have extradited one of the terrorists responsible for the murder of the 13 American soldiers at Abbey Gate during the disastrous Afghanistan withdrawal. One step closer to justice for these American heroes and their families, says Kash, and we were excited to see that develop. Now, elsewhere, we also saw that there was a hearing today in the Judiciary Committee, I believe, or the Oversight Committee, and James Comer kicked it off this morning. He dragged in a bunch of these other illegal mayors into the congressional forum to ask them questions, and here's what that sounded like.
Questions for 5 minutes, and I have limited time, so I want to start with a simple yes or no question. And I'm going to hold you all to that because after the first question, then we'll allow for a little more time. But Mayor Johnston, in 2017, Denver prohibited city officials, including corrections officers, from assisting and cooperating with any investigation, detention, or arrest procedures related to federal immigration laws. The city also stated that
Caroline Levitt's coming out.
Everybody, how are we? I apologize for my tardiness. It's quite the newsy day, and I was with the president talking about that news, so I look forward to taking your questions on it. But first, I want to talk about President Trump's historic and incredible speech last night.
It was.
The American people and the entire world watched President Trump powerfully lay out how he's renewing the American dream in a record-breaking joint address to Congress. And Americans loved what they heard. According to a CBS YouGov survey, an overwhelming 76% of those watching approved of President Trump's speech last night. The president spoke about how he's taken more than 400 executive actions on his key promises. The expectations were high, and President Trump is exceeding them. According to brand new polling from the Daily Mail, President Trump has never been more popular as his approval ratings are reaching historic highs. More Americans believe America is headed in the right direction than the wrong direction. Everyday Americans love this president because he tells it like it is, no matter what, and he did that last night. President Trump level set with the American people on the economy and exposed how badly Joe Biden screwed it up by causing the worst inflation crisis in 4 decades. President Trump was honest about where we are while making clear that help is on the way. As the president declared last night, he will make America affordable again. Last night, you also saw who motivates the president to work so hard. Everyday Americans who President Trump shined a spotlight on last night in his speech. From Mark Fogel, who President Trump was finally able to reunite with his family and his beautiful 95-year-old mother after being detained in Russia, to Peyton McNabb, whose heart-wrenching story motivated President Trump to end men in women's sports, and to Allison and Lauren Phillips, the mother and daughter and sister of Laken Riley, who President Trump honored by signing the Laken Riley Act to ensure her name will live on forever. In other amazing and surprise moments, President Trump honored the life of Jocelyn Nungare, who was brutally murdered by illegal alien gang members. He ensured Jocelyn will never be forgotten by renaming a national wildlife refuge in her home state of Texas to honor her life. And in one of the greatest surprise moments of the night, DJ Daniel, an incredible 13-year-old boy who is beating brain cancer, saw his dreams fulfilled by President Trump when he was made an honorary Secret Service agent. And finally, after nearly 4 years, President Trump delivered justice for the families of the 13 American heroes who were killed at Abbey Gate in the Biden-botched Afghanistan withdrawal, which was one of the worst humiliations in the history of our country. President Trump announced that we have detained Mohammed Sharifullah, the monster who was responsible for that horrific attack, and he was delivered to Dulles Airfield earlier this morning. On his first day in office, President Trump's national security team across the federal government prioritized intelligence gathering to locate this evil individual. President Trump's team shared intelligence with regional partners such as Pakistan, who helped identify this monster in the borderland area late last month. Mohammed confessed to his crimes related to Abbey Gate and other attacks in Russia and Iran as well to the Pakistanis. And U.S. law enforcement officers traveled to Pakistan over the weekend, where he again confessed his crimes to the FBI. As President Trump said last night, this killer will now face the swift sword of American justice for these atrocities right here on United States soil. Joe Biden was responsible for this botched withdrawal, and he had 3 years to find this evil terrorist, and he didn't even try to get the job done. But President Trump campaigned on behalf of and grew very close to the Gold Star families. He promised them accountability, and last night, he kept his promise. He spoke to those Gold Star families yesterday, ahead of his speech, in an incredibly heartwarming call to share this incredible news. And as President Trump asked in his speech last night, how could anyone possibly be opposed to any of this action that he is taking? Well, apparently, the modern-day Democrat Party could. The behavior of Democrats last night was completely disgraceful and demonstrated how severely out of touch they are with the American public. It was the most shameful moment in the history of presidential addresses in that beautiful chamber. In what was supposed to be a unifying moment for our country, Democrat members of Congress instead screamed at the President of the United States, who was just overwhelmingly reelected by their constituents, walked out of the chamber, and worst of all, they disrespected the American people. Democrats didn't stand to keep men out of women's sports. They couldn't even clap for a girl who got her head smashed in by a man on a volleyball court.
Wild.
Democrats didn't stand for an innocent and beautiful child who is surviving brain cancer. They opposed eliminating taxes on tips and Social Security. They didn't stand in favor of cutting taxes for hardworking Americans. They couldn't even clap for 2 mothers whose daughters were killed by illegal aliens. One of the only things that could get Democrats off their feet last night was cheering for Ukraine.
Yep.
Not for America. Last night was a very clarifying moment for our country. The Democrats exposed themselves as the party of insanity and hate, the party that wants to put America last. They've allowed their Trump derangement syndrome to stop them from celebrating America and our people, and we will not allow them to forget that. And it's not just the Democrat Party. The mainstream media still doesn't get it. Last night, MSNBC's Nicole Wallace disgustingly looped in a 13-year-old boy with brain cancer into an attack on the president over January 6th. And CNN's first chyron out of the speech called it divisive. President Trump wasn't divisive. The Democrats were. And CNN was proven wrong by their own viewers, 69% of whom, in a post-speech poll, said they had a positive reaction to the president's speech.
He crushed.
It's sad and frankly pathetic that Democrats and liberals in the legacy media continue to allow their hatred for the president to override their love for our country. But nevertheless, the president will continue to unify this nation through policies that are grounded in common sense and that uplift all Americans. We have an individual in our new media seat today, Mary Margaret Olohan, who is the Daily Wire's first ever White House correspondent. Congratulations, Mary Margaret.
What's up, Daily Wire?
The Daily Wire was founded 10 years ago by Ben Shapiro. The Daily Wire now has over 1 million paid subscribers, a monthly network reach of 138 million, and has evolved into a leading conservative multimedia giant. They are now the 5th largest podcast network in the world and home to some of the top-ranked shows. With that, I will take your questions, and Mary Margaret.
All right, let's go.
Thank you so much, Caroline. It's great to be here. Thanks. So I had 2 questions, if that's okay. The first
Sure.
on last night and the second on Maine. You talked about behavior from Democrat lawmakers, a lot of disruptions, and I just wanted to kind of go back to that. We saw Democrat lawmakers not stand for Laken Riley, for Peyton McNabb, for the son of a slain police officer and 13-year-old cancer survivor. What are the optics of that nationally, just in terms of not just the people who were in the room last night, but across the nation? And also, was President Trump expecting this type of behavior when he was crafting his speech?
So I gave a quote to one of the media outlets in this room yesterday that Democrats behaving like children would be the least surprising thing of the night. And unfortunately, that quote did turn out to be true. I think the president and everyone, frankly, was surprised by the Democrats refusing to stand for not the president's policies, because frankly we expected that, but for the everyday Americans who President Trump was shining a light on their stories. Mark Fogel, for instance, an American school teacher who was detained by the Russians. President Trump freed him. If Joe Biden had done that, they all would have been on their feet, but because of it came from President Trump, they weren't. So we think it's very sad, but we're very proud of the president today, and the American people are the people that this president cares about most, and the reviews are in, and everybody loved his speech.
Thank you. And then on Maine, we know that the governor of Maine has really pushed back against the president's executive order saying that boys should not be in girls' sports. I spoke with a lawmaker from Maine this morning who told me she'd been censured by state lawmakers for calling a man and speaking up on this. What is the next move for the White House in this battle to protect the integrity of women's sports?
Yeah, well, the Department of Education has sued the state of Maine. As you know, there's ongoing litigation. The president has made a commitment to ensure that states are being held accountable if they continue to allow men in women's sports, which he believes is an egregious violation of taxpayer dollars. And so that fight continues, and the president won't back down. Again, this is a common sense policy. 80% of the American people, including more than 60% of Democrats, do not want men in women's sports. So the president will stand by this commitment. Thank you. Gabe, good to see you in here.
Good to see you, Caroline. A couple questions. One, can you confirm that the president held talks with the big 3 automakers today, speaking about potentially delaying tariffs?
I can confirm, and I'm glad that you asked, because the president sent me out here with a statement directly from him on this. I saw it was reported earlier today by Bloomberg News, and he wanted me to share this with all of you. We spoke with the big 3 auto dealers. We are going to give a 1-month exemption on any autos coming through USMCA. Reciprocal tariffs will still go into effect on April 2nd, but at the request of the companies associated with USMCA, the president is giving them an exemption for 1 month so they are not at an economic disadvantage. So the 3 companies that he spoke to are Stellantis, Ford, and General Motors. They requested the call, they made the ask, and the president is happy to do it. It's a 1-month exemption.
And the president just posted on social media that he had spoken with Prime Minister Trudeau. He says he's not satisfied with what the Prime Minister has said when it comes to fentanyl, but less than 1%, as you know, less than 1% of the fentanyl seized last year was in the northern border. What else does Canada need to do?
Well, the president did just put out a statement on his call with the governor, Justin Trudeau, as he calls him, of Canada. And he said that he was not pleased, as you said. He said it's not good enough. He told Prime Minister Justin Trudeau that directly. The call ended in a somewhat friendly manner, as the president said, but he's not going to stop standing up for the American people. And to answer your question directly when it comes to fentanyl, for the last 4 years, unfortunately, our neighbors to the north and the south, Canada and Mexico respectively, have allowed America to be a dumping ground, not just for illegal aliens, but for illegal, poisonous, deadly fentanyl, which is now the #1 killer of young people in this country aged 18 to 34. Through the northern border in Canada, in last fiscal year alone, there was enough fentanyl seized to kill 4.8 billion people. And that number is up 2,050% from 2023, the year before. So there's been more than a 2,000% increase in illegal fentanyl seizure at the northern border. Why? Because Canada is allowing that fentanyl to come to the United States. The president sees these numbers. He thinks about the lives that are lost. And everybody in this room, I'm sure, everybody watching at home, everybody across the country knows someone in our lives who has been killed at the hands of this deadly poison. There needs to be repercussions for that. The president feels very strongly about it.
Caroline, respectfully, it's just 43 pounds that were found last year. That's less than a carry-on suitcase. Is that a lot of fentanyl compared to, say, Mexico?
Many people can that
the vast majority of the fentanyl is brought in through Mexico, not Canada. So what else does Canada need to do?
Well, I just told you, last year alone, there was a 2,000% increase in illegal fentanyl. You're asking me for what the president's justification is for these tariffs. It's not up to you. You're not the president, Gabe. And frankly, I think it's a little bit disrespectful to the families in this country who have lost loved ones at the hands of this deadly poison. If you talk to them, and this president has, they are grateful that they finally have a president who is standing up to both Canada and Mexico, and most importantly, to China as well. The president added an additional 10% tariff on China because this deadly poison is being produced in that country. It's being distributed through our neighbors, and there needs to be consequences for that, period. Peter.
Thank you, Caroline.
2 milligram
doses. The U.S. has a long-standing policy
9.7
that we do not negotiate with terrorists. Then why is the U.S. now negotiating directly and for the first time ever with Hamas?
Well, when it comes to the negotiations that you're referring to, first of all, the special envoy who's engaged in those negotiations does have the authority to talk to anyone. Israel was consulted on this matter. And look, dialogue and talking to people around the world to do what's in the best interest of the American people is something that the president has proven is what he believes is good faith effort to do what's right for the American people.
Is it just about the hostages? Or are they also talking about the president's plan to take over Gaza?
These are ongoing talks and discussions. I am not going to detail them here. There are American lives at stake. I would defer you to the Department of State for further details, but I'm not going to get into those talks here at this podium.
We know that some officials here were miffed that Zelensky showed up last week without a suit for his meeting in the Oval Office. But Elon Musk never wears a suit.
He did last night.
So what is the dress code?
Well, Elon Musk wore a suit last night. I'm sure you saw it.
It looked Zelensky getting kicked out?
No, I don't think so. I'm just pointing out that he did wear a suit last night, and I think the president liked that very much, and he looked great. Speaking of the president, he just passed me a note while I'm standing here. He wanted me to hold this up. This is the poll that I cited, the CBS YouGov poll that shows that 76% of those who watched the president's speech last night approved of his speech. And so it goes to my earlier point that I made in my monologue about how incredibly sad it is that we have a modern-day Democrat Party who is so severely out of touch with the American public. This is a great poll. The ultimate poll, though, came on November 5th when the president won by an overwhelming margin that he spoke about last night. Democrats weren't happy to hear that either. Ouija.
Thank you, Caroline. Back on tariffs, last night President Trump said there will be a little disturbance, but we're okay with that. Can you put a dollar figure amount on how much the average American family should expect to pay as this disturbance? And why should Americans be okay with that when so many are already struggling to pay the bills?
Well, first of all, last night, the president told the truth. and he was realistic, and he level set with the American people. And I think, frankly, it's very refreshing, and everybody in this room should be very grateful that we have a president who tells the truth about the reality of the economic situation that we are in, unlike the previous president who lied to everybody's faces, saying inflation was transitory, saying it was under control, saying that the border was secure, when none of that was true. So the president is being frank and honest, and the American people elected this president to have monumental reform and change, including rebuilding our manufacturing base in this country, standing up to foreign nations who have been ripping off our country for decades. And that requires a little bit of disruption. That requires a lot of effort and work that this president is focused on doing. With that said, as the president said last night, his administration is wholeheartedly committed, of course, to ending the inflation nightmare caused by the Biden administration. Look at the deregulation efforts. Look at the president's push last night in his speech for Congress to pass tax cuts, to end taxes on Social Security and overtime pay for hardworking Americans, end taxes on tips. We need Congress to get that done because that's going to put more money back into the pockets of the American people. And I didn't even mention energy. Look at the president's approach and focus on unleashing the might of our energy industry. We know that's the #1 driver of inflation. He's been slashing back a lot of the burdensome regulation from the previous administration to unleash our energy industry here at home, which will drive down costs. He said he is committed to making America affordable again. He did it in his first term, and Americans can trust him to do it again.
President Trump has made clear, Caroline, that he loves tariffs, but the stock market does not. How does he factor that into his decision making?
Well, the president does love tariffs. He said it's one of his favorite words in the English dictionary, and he believes in tariffs because they'll ultimately make America rich again. They're going to raise revenue. They're going to help us pay down our debt. Most importantly, they're going to bring American jobs here back home. So I think for folks on Wall Street who may be concerned, look at what this president did for you in his first term. Wall Street boomed. Stock market boomed. The president expects that to happen again, but most importantly, Main Street is going to boom, and that's why the president has this whole of government economic approach, which includes tax cuts, tariffs, regulation cuts, and an energy industry that will bring down costs for American consumers. Sure, Monica.
Thank you, Caroline. You mentioned not one Democrat senator voted to protect women's sports from males. Not one Democrat congressman or congresswoman stood to applaud or support protecting women's spaces and sports at the president's joint session to Congress last night, as you articulately mentioned in the beginning. So I'm wondering, what message is that sending to not only young women who are competing in these sports across the country, but also to the parents of these young girls?
Yeah. I think the message that Americans should take away from last night is that they have a president in the Oval Office who is committed to doing what's right for them, especially women and girls across the country. And I think it's very ironic, thank you for bringing up the point about women, that Democrat women were wearing pink to support our fellow females, yet they couldn't stand again for a young woman who was almost killed and severely injured by a man on the volleyball court. They couldn't stand for the mothers of two beautiful young women whose lives were taken tragically at the hands of illegal people. So you can't say you're the party of women and then support men and women's sports and not stand up for basic law and order and immigration reform that will protect women in this country. That's what President Trump is doing. He's the president for women. Lindsay, good to see you.
Thank you, Caroline. Good to see you. So, speaking of tariffs, China said yesterday that they're ready for any kind of war with the U.S. Because of these tariffs that have been placed on them. And a Chinese spokesperson also said that the tariffs would not lead to a resolution of U.S. concerns about fentanyl originating in China. Can you speak to how the administration is planning on responding to that?
Well, I think Secretary Hegseth has responded to that this morning. He said that America will always be prepared to defend itself, especially under the leadership of this president in the Oval Office. And that certainly remains true. Again, when it comes to tariffs, the president has been very tough on China, not just now with 20% and more with the reciprocal tariffs that will hit on April 2nd. But look at what he did in his first term. There were billions of dollars worth of tariffs that he implemented on China. And it's quite telling that the previous administration did not rescind those tariffs because they realized the value that they had in not only deterring China, but also raising revenue here in the United States. Rachel.
Thanks, Caroline. Just a quick follow-up, two quick follow-ups on tariffs. The president mentioned a little disturbance during his remarks yesterday. The CEO of Target says that consumers will likely see prices go up on everything from strawberries to bananas to avocados. How long should Americans expect to pay higher prices? Are we talking a week, a couple of days, a few months?
Again, I don't have a crystal ball, but what I can assure the American people is that this president and this administration is doing everything they can. And I would remind you and everybody else in this room that it's because of the previous administration's economic policies that Americans were left with record high inflation. Inflation throughout Joe Biden's entire 48 months in office was at or above 3%. It hit record highs, as you know. And there's a whole list of what the Biden economic disaster this president was left to clean up. It's been a month, but he's working hard every single day to do just that.
One quick follow-up on the carve-out. Sorry to cut you off there. The U.S. imported $43 million worth of eggs from Canada. I know you mentioned some of the exemptions when it comes to automakers. Will there be any other carve-outs, including for eggs? We know prices are soaring for Americans.
The president is open to hearing about additional exemptions. He always has open dialogue, and he'll always do, what's right, what he believes is right for the American people. But again, as for the egg crisis in this country, the president is wholeheartedly committed to ensuring we're increasing our egg supply, and we're also bringing down cost. And Secretary Rollins has been all over this issue. She comes from an agricultural background and family. That's why she's leading that very important department. She wrote an amazing op-ed in the Wall Street Journal. She's been all over the media talking about her plan. She has a real plan. The president endorses it. And he even, gave her an off-the-prompter shout-out last night to say, Brooke, I'm counting on you. It's an important issue. And this White House is working with Secretary of Agriculture every single day to address this issue. Sure. Jordan.
Thanks, Caroline. So what does it say that the Democrats, while they couldn't stand for Americans or stand for victims, they stood for war and clapped for war and clapped for 5 more years of war?
Love it.
Yeah, the president addressed that last night, I think, when he called out Senator Elizabeth Warren and said that, again, as I said in my opening speech, very telling that the Democrats refused to clap for American people and American interests and American priorities, but they did clap for the country of Ukraine, which, by the way, the president's working very hard to end that war. So Democrats should be applauding him for actually doing something about it.
Follow up on that if I can. You've spoken recently about how what happened in the Oval Office last week gave Americans an inside look into behind-the-scenes discussions with Zelensky. Is this how he treated Joe Biden and just treated him disrespectfully and received billions of dollars?
Well, it's a very interesting question. I don't know if anybody in here asked my predecessor who stood at this podium about that, but there was a report from NBC News that President Biden also got increasingly frustrated with President Zelensky when he was handing out blank checks and President Zelensky kept asking for more. Joe Biden was quite frustrated with that. So again, as I've said repeatedly, Friday revealed the frustrations that this administration has had in closed-door negotiations with the Ukrainians. However, President Zelensky did put out a statement yesterday, which we believe is a positive step forward. And National Security Advisor Mike Waltz has been talking to his Ukrainian counterparts. And so we're in the midst of this, and we'll see what happens next. Caitlin.
Thanks, Caroline. I have 2 questions. One on the reprieve that is being granted to these 3 automakers for 1 month on the tariffs on Canada and Mexico. How did the president settle on 1 month?
The reciprocal tariffs will go into effect on April 2nd, and he feels strongly about that no matter what, no exemption, so that's where the 1 month comes from.
Does he expect them to be able to shift production within a month?
He told them that they should get on it, start investing, start moving, shift production here to the United States of America, where they will pay no tariff. That's the ultimate goal.
And on the conversations between the White House and the Ukrainians and the letter that President Trump revealed last night that he got from President Zelensky, Director Ratcliffe said today that the president has paused also intelligence sharing with Ukraine. Is that temporary or is that permanent?
I believe what the National Security Council told me in regards to that was that they paused or they are reconsidering the funding for Ukraine, as you saw, the pause on the funding. As for intelligence matters, I would refer you to either the National Security Council or the CIA.
But they're considering lifting or reinstating the military aid going to Ukraine, which they paused this
Again,
week.
it's a pause for a review.
Follow up on that.
Sure.
The president read parts of the letter that he received last night from President Zelensky. Can you give us a sense of when President Trump now plans to sign that minerals deal after receiving that letter?
Those talks are happening as we speak. I just saw the National Security Advisor. He's working very hard on it. I believe he was going into the Oval Office to give the president an update on where this stands. But again, the president is committed to a peace deal. He wants to see this war end. And I think that President Zelensky's message, which he also shared on X as well, is a positive sign in the right direction.
The president also said that the United States was reclaiming the Panama Canal. The president of Panama this morning, or at some point today, said that President Trump was lying. Wanted to get your response to that, and also curious if the president had a reason for not specifically mentioning BlackRock last night when he was praising the company that is buying canals or ports around the Panama Canal.
Yeah, I'm not sure if Panama has seen what's going on with their own canal, but as you just mentioned, BlackRock is now interested in investing and taking over the two ends of the port, which is very important because the president was very vocal several weeks ago about the need to ensure that China is not controlling the Panama Canal. This is a very important place for the United States of America. Saw that the Panama Canal lifted fees on our U.S. naval ships that are States of America, and the president will continue to ensure that the Chinese government, the CCP, cannot be infiltrated in the Western Hemisphere, and certainly not in the Panama Canal, which is a very important place for our country. Dasha.
The president continues to call the Prime Minister of Canada, Justin Trudeau, Governor of Canada. I'm curious what he means by that, and if there are any plans that are moving forward with trying to make Canada the 51st state. And I have a follow-up on the economy as well.
Sure. Well, the president put that in his True Social account, or his True Social post earlier today. He feels strongly that it would be very beneficial for the Canadian people to be the 51st state of the United States. They wouldn't be paying for these tariffs. They'd have much lower taxes if they were part of our great country.
Caroline, on the economy, you and I traveled the country during the campaign. This is an issue that so many voters decided to cast their ballots on, and they voted for President Trump. He has started to have that realistic conversation with the American people, that disturbance comment last night. But I'm curious if you can be real with Americans right now as all of these factors are playing out. Are things potentially going to get worse before they get better?
Look, I've now been asked and answered this same question just given to me in different verbiage of 3 different times, and I will answer it again in an effort of transparency to the American people, because this is an important issue, and the American people, this president understands that it is. And again, that's why in his joint address to Congress last night, he addressed this issue with a realistic and honest approach. He talked about what this administration is doing to unleash American energy and to make America affordable again, and this administration is wholeheartedly committed to doing it. And I would remind the American public that the first-term record of this president speaks volumes. That's why they reelected him, because they know that he can fix our broken economy, and it's very, very broken from the previous administration. Stephen.
Thank you, Caroline. I've got 2 questions, one on press access, and the other on fentanyl and tariffs.
Sure.
On press access, your predecessor, Karine Jean-Pierre, who presided over many novel press access restrictions, criticized the recent changes to the press pool made by your office. She said in an interview, quote, what we're looking at is what North Korea is doing. What's your response to that, and can you say anything to allay concerns that unfavorable coverage will be punished in this new press pool system?
I think that's the same individual who said from this podium numerous times that the commander-in-chief was mentally and physically up for the job, which we knew was a lie.
No.
Many people in this room knew it was a lie. Many of you were admonished for asking questions about that truth. So when it comes to truth and transparency, this administration, this White House is setting the example. This president is taking far more questions than his predecessor, Joe Biden, did on a daily basis, and that will continue.
And on fentanyl and tariffs, fentanyl produced largely in China has killed 334,000 Americans over 5 years. According to CDC data, that's about 1 in every 1,000 Americans. President Trump has cited this for applying new tariffs to Canada, Mexico, and China. But in addition to China's talk about being ready for any kind of war, they said yesterday, the foreign ministry said that, quote, the fentanyl issue is a flimsy excuse to raise U.S. tariffs, and, quote, the U.S., not anyone else, is responsible for the fentanyl crisis. So what's the response to China that the talk of fentanyl is just an excuse for tariffs, And what does that say about the resolution?
Well, of course, the country that is getting very rich off of distributing this deadly poison to American citizens is going to say that. Again, the president knows where the American people stand on this issue. Fentanyl overdoses. Dasha brought up all of us campaigning all across the country. They talked about inflation. They also talked about the border, the illegal immigrants that we're pouring through, but also these deadly drugs. And again, the president keeps in mind those families every single day when he is making these tough decisions. But it's a necessary decision, and he's no longer going to allow the United States of America to be a dumping ground for illegal immigrants and for illegal drugs that are killing our nation's people. This is the #1 leading cause of death in our country, and there needs to be action taken to ensure that that cannot continue. Thank you very much, guys. We'll see you later.
Caroline Levitt. All right, so press briefing from Caroline now completed. Not much news, I would say, came out of this. Some maybe news would be exceptions to the tariffs, saying everything else is pretty much moving forward. And I think that it was about what we expected. The poll has been up there for most of the time, saying that many Americans approve of what the president delivered yesterday. And so, of course, another successful briefing from Caroline. All right. And so, my friends, let's see what you say about all of this and more. Let's see who's here. I see some additional donos that have come in. And, oh, they put some music on. All right. So let's mute that. All right. So let's see who's here. What's going on? Yeah. Hey, no, I did not see this. So we had this one from Sharpie Guy. Thank you, Sharpie Guy, for that. Charitard, I did not see this. No. Did you see a spitball hit Trump at the address? No, I did not. But if that happened, that's an assault on the president. Secret Service should investigate. ELZ says, my favorite quote from Trump last night, how did that work out for you? It didn't work out well for them. And it's not a good tactic to weaponize the government against your political opponents. I think the people can see through it. They abuse the process. Now there should be some repercussions for those who broke the law. Glenn Croy, what's up, Glenn? Brought in 5 membos. Thank you, Glenn. Look who's coming in. Angela Shannon. We got Nate Ford, Rice Attack, Old Soldier, and others like Scott Campbell coming in the house. Welcome aboard, and thank you, Glenn Croy, for bringing him in. Ed is here. Ed asked the question about the Supreme Court decision that we covered at the start. Was the direction to Judge Amir to give details about what's to be paid and when in the dissent? Not in the majority? No, it was in the majority. If so, Amir doesn't have to do that. He can just reissue the previous order and new deadlines, right? No, he does have to clarify. That was in the majority. So here is basically the holding. Yep, this is in the majority. You can see this is from this is the first page. Says the district court should clarify what obligations the government must fulfill to ensure compliance with due regard for the feasibility of compliance. So that's in the majority. So it's not much guidance. It's not much direction or context for the judge, but we'll see what he does with it. But it is in the majority. Hey, Renee and Glenn just became supporters. Great to see you both. Thank you for joining up and supporting our work. Glenn, welcome. Renee, welcome. What's up? Jer Doyle says they're shaping polls now to later claim that Trump's approval fell due to blah, fill in the blank, with results designed to match their narrative. They're playing the long game. So you think they're trying to boost him to show there's this collapse that's going to happen later? Yeah, that could be one possibility. Of course, they do manipulate the polls, but they're going to have a tough time. I mean, what is the plausible alternative, I think, is the problem. Like, Trump is going down relative to what? The Democrats? Because I think they buried themselves even further last night. Hey, what's up, Gloria B? Gifted a membo in the house. What's up, NBA Meathead? NBA Meathead in the house. Welcome aboard. Thanks for joining. Gloria, thanks for bringing him in. And Knox says, hey, happy Wednesday, all. Could this egg fixation be sabotaged by all the bird flu and bird killing? Just a thought. Well, I think that's part of the reason why we have this egg problem, is because my understanding was there was a bird flu scare and Biden eliminated a bunch of the birds. So we have a supply problem, a production problem. We have too few chickens. We need more chickens. So I think that might be the problem. We don't want the sick chickens, though, of course. All right, my friends, thank you for sending in those amazing donos. Let's say hello to our friends on X, then we'll wrap it up on the day. And we had a couple people joining us over there. What's up, Barb? Barb said, if it's for work already done, then they ought to submit an audit, prove all expenses via an expense report, and provide a plan for any future expenditures. Yeah, that's a great point. Oh, you did the work? What work? Let me verify, and then we'll pay you the money. And if you are lying to us, then that seems like it's fraud, and you'll be prosecuted accordingly. B. Torn says, Al Green's cane is a prop. He just wags it at people. He doesn't even use it for walking anymore. He just shakes it and mumbles soliloquies of his imbecility. Yeah, it's true. Fred, what's up? Fred Pedamonte says, there are 94 district courts, there are 13 appellate courts, and a Supreme Court, not to mention many special courts. Does there really need to be this complicated? Calvin says, now we're in a constitutional crisis, right? The judiciary is trying to overtake the executive branch. Abby says, the Supreme Court turned to the dark side. Very unfortunate for the American people. And Cynthia says, oh, it isn't just Alito. It's Amy, it's Roberts. No, Alito was on the right side of this one. Yeah, Amy and Roberts were not good today. Congress needs to get off its booty, stop this money from going out. Thank you, Cynthia. And Lisa Ann says, Amy is no friend of the American people. Very bad choice. Roberts, we knew. This is sickening. Good to see you, Lisa Ann. Good to see you, friends, over on X. If you want to follow us over there, it's at Rob Govea ESQ. And of course, we encourage you to follow other watchers out there as well. But my friends, we are now today going to wrap it up. We're going to head over to Locals, watchingthewatchers.locals.com to debrief and round it out on the day. Of course, your boy's traveling down to Scottsdale. I have an event, all-day event tomorrow, so it's going to be from like 8 to 7, I think, tomorrow. So not likely that we're going to get a live stream in tomorrow, but we will be back on Friday, and so we'll get back to it then. Unless something happens and I just can't help myself, I'm going to try to play all in at this event and enjoy it. So, my friends, I want to thank you so much for being here. Hey, mods, thanks to the amazing mods and our amazing meme smiths and doc masters and more for being here. K-Bean, Donut, Carrie B, Playing Hooky, Dog Digger, and Janek in the house, modding the fort down for us, keeping things nice and beautiful and orderly. Jeffrey Adams also posted this. Thank you, Jeffrey, for working on Elon for us. Says, hey, nice work last night, Rob. Thank you, Jeffrey. Still working on the Cybertruck thing for you. It would be crazy. Jeffrey, could you imagine? Get a Cybertruck courtesy of Elon and Jeffrey Adams. That'd be amazing. So, yeah, very fun. Very fun stuff. And if you missed yesterday, what we were talking about was Elon said you could get a Cybertruck if you can prove who scripted the video that was copied and pasted by 22 Democrats. And we speculate, don't know for sure, that it's Brian Tyler Cohen and his group. What was this group called? Course or something with the C. I forget what it's called. But we covered it yesterday. And man, I'd love a Cybertruck. That'd be cool. We could live stream from Cybertrucks with Starlinks, just driving around. It'd be a lot of fun. Thank you, Jeffrey Adams, for plugging for us. My friends, that is going to be it for us on the day. Thanks for joining us a little bit extra early today. And then we are going to see you back here on Friday. So tomorrow, I hope that your day is amazing as well. And we'll come back. We'll have a final week show on Friday. But until then, my friends, I want to thank you once again for being here. Thanks for liking this video on your way out. Thanks for subscribing. We are going to come back in a few short days, and we're going to get into it again. And in order to do it appropriately, we're going to need to see you right back here so that together, with your help, we can shine that big, beautiful spotlight of accountability and transparency down upon our system with the hope of finding justice. Make it a beautiful day, my friends. I'll see you right back here on Friday. Bye-bye.